So welcome back to the Proper Thieves, everyone. We're here with Mr. Jeff K. And Jeff, can you tell us a little bit about why you're here?
I'm here to talk about divorce and the opportunity inside of it and how it can help you grow. I believe that divorce is a Trojan horse for personal growth. And I think most guys either give completely up and just become these angry shells of themselves, or they look inside and really embrace the challenge and try to figure out how they can grow because of it. And I try to help the latter to become better.
Yeah,
I love that analogy as a Trojan horse for development.
yeah.
It's pretty. Have you been divorced yourself? Is that why you?
I have. Yeah. When I was working on my business, I was making it too general, and I had a marketing coach come to me and say, the best way to help with personal growth coaching is to look inside and find what your deepest wound is. And I wouldn't say my divorce was my deepest wound, but it played a pretty critical part in my growth. And looking back, 10 years ago, I was a completely different person, and going through it, it felt like hell. It was absolute misery when I was going through it. But I look back and, now I can say, thank God I went through it, because living a much better life. I'm a much better person. I live this, I've got much better people around me. And it's because I started looking inside rather than blaming my circumstances for where I was.
Yeah.
What issues led up to the divorce?
I think I was a really weak, I think I was a really weak person before the divorce. I can show you pictures.
Weak in what way?
Yeah, I was out of shape, horribly out of shape. I was a bit of a punching bag. I let people walk all over me, and my ex probably did that. And I didn't know how to, there's a couple ways to say this. I didn't know how to sit with myself, meaning I didn't know how to be okay with my emotions. And I didn't have that emotional self-regulation. And so people could poke me, and I would react poorly. But if you have bad emotional self-regulation, then somebody can control you through that. So I would say that was my biggest weakness at the time. And then a divorce is just about the most emotional thing a man can go through, maybe next to losing somebody close to them. A divorce is purely emotional, and to have this mark of control, because all of a sudden your wife becomes your biggest enemy. She knows all of your buttons. And suddenly you're in a court and you're being judged by the things you do and the way you act. So if she pushes your buttons and you react poorly, then court is not going to go your way.
I gotcha.
Was this court in America or
Canada?
Canada. Is the divorce court different significantly in Canada and America? Or are they pretty similar?
Well, I haven't been divorced in the US, knock on wood.
Good.
But from what I've heard, it's very similar. And I would even argue the West in general is very similar. I'm working with a guy from Wales. He is going through something really similar to what I went through. There's been other guys in Canada. There's guys in Canada who don't want to get divorced because they don't want to go through that ringer. They don't want to get put through that misery. So they are staying with their wives. I'm working with one guy. His wife is absolutely abusive to him, like physically, emotionally, verbally, like in front of their kids.
Yeah.
And he says he doesn't want to get divorced because he knows he would get wrecked. So I think it's a pretty standard experience through the West.
Yeah. Does having a prenup in any way, shape, or form help that situation?
I am not on the legal side. You would have to ask somebody else about that. But I've heard stories that prenups get torn down in court.
Really? Okay. So walk
Maybe
me
not
through.
100%, but you know, often enough that
But they're not bulletproof.
they're not
Right.
enough.
So are you helping people primarily that are just now going through the divorce or trying to help build them up after the fact?
Primarily afterwards. I'm tending to work with those guys who are, if you want to picture this, they're walking down the steps of the courthouse and they're like, what the hell just happened to me?
Okay.
Like, how do I rebuild my life? You know, I went from being a full-time father to only seeing my kids every other weekend. What am I doing now? Like, and like they had their house taken away from them, their house, their castle. They had their wife is now their enemy. They've been accused of all sorts of things. Like, how do I rebuild my life from?
Right. And I'm sure all those situations are very unique and personal, but if there's like a general first step that men can take after they've walked down those steps, what would that first step be?
Put your own oxygen mask on first. Do something for yourself.
Hmm. Okay.
So I took, and this is going to sound really selfish, but it helped my mental health so much. I took 6 months and I just went traveling and I did all the things I didn't do before that in my life. You know, I had pretty wild experiences and I just did things for myself to, it's going to sound worse than I mean it to, but to convince myself that life was worth living and that my life wasn't over yet.
Hmm. Okay.
And then I came back and realized I had a whole bunch of work to do. So physical work, I had to make more money, you know, dial in my relationships. And as I did that, my life improved.
Yeah.
But the first step is focus on yourself.
Gotcha. Okay. So after having go through a divorce, what is your opinion on like marriage for the majority of people now and like how they pick a partner? Are you basically have you because of this experience like sworn off marriage or are you still open to it again in the future or what's that side of things look like?
No, I'm married again. I'm been with her for over 10 years.
Oh, congratulations.
Okay.
Um, you know, it's really interesting. After first marriages, 50% of them fail. Second marriages, 60% of them fail. Third and beyond, I think it's 70%. But what's
Wow.
interesting to me, that's such a crazy high number. I think it's I'm going to quote a number here, but I might be off slightly. I think it's something like 85% of people who have a divorce try to get married again or partner up again.
Really?
So I think that says something about the human condition that we're not meant to be alone.
Mm-hmm.
So what I believe is those people who fail don't do any introspection and they don't do any work on themselves to try and improve who they are and therefore fix their relationship. So I am in favor of partnering up after you go through a divorce with the caveat that you do the work on yourself, find out what those things are that made your previous relationship fail, fix that
Mm-hmm.
in yourself, and then go on. I believe in taking full responsibility for where you are in life. So no matter what happened, you are responsible for that thing. Your ex cheated on you, it's your fault. Take responsibility for that, fix that gap, and move on to the next thing. Why did she cheat on you? Why did she, why did she leave you? Whatever
Mm-hmm.
that is, it's your job to find that, fix that, and before starting a new relationship.
Was there a specific low point that you remember that you had decided it's time to change?
After my divorce or before?
Yeah. Yeah, after. Or maybe it was during.
I'd like to hear both if you don't
Yeah.
mind. Like
Sure,
was
sure.
there yeah, like was there a point during the marriage where you're like, okay, well something might be going wrong here?
There wasn't, I remember this specific moment where I was completely depressed. This was when I was married. I was very depressed and I went out for a walk to clear my head and I was in Canada. So I think it was like -20. I just remember it being absolutely frigid. And when it's
Mm,
that cold, there's no clouds. and I looked up and I could see a plane going overhead, and I just wished I could be anywhere but there.
Mm.
But then there's also, and I had been just started working with a coach who told me, wherever you go, there you are. And those two ideas of wanting to not be here and the wherever you go, there you are. So meaning I could be anywhere and I would still be depressed and unhappy and wishing I was somewhere else.
Mm.
Those two ideas were antithetical, and I was like, what's going on here? And I started working on myself shortly after that. There wasn't like this definitive moment where I hit that low point, but it was just not wanting to be where I was. I started working on myself. I lost a bunch of weight. And what's interesting is when I started working on myself, my relationship with my ex started getting worse. And I couldn't figure that out.
Mm.
And looking back now, what I realized is I was really easily controllable. And when I started working on myself, I became less controllable. So she started pulling away in order to try to get that control back. And this is all subconscious, right? Like
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
you have to really have that hindsight, that benefit of hindsight. And looking back, I see that now, but in the moment, it's really hard to see. It's really
Yeah.
hard to recognize that. But I think that was the worst part of the relationship. When I started working on myself, she pulled away. And then in terms of post-divorce, it lasted like 4 or 5 years, cost, probably well over $100,000.
Mm.
Mm.
The lowest point was we disagreed on how much money I should be paying and how much money or how much time I should be spending with my kids. Now, first of all, that's such a weird conversation to have. You're a father, you should see your kids whenever you need to.
Right.
So to have that conversation of every third Tuesday and every second weekend or whatever it is, what a weird conversation that is to be having. And all of a sudden, we made about the same amount of money. And then all of a sudden I'm paying her a mortgage payment every month. That didn't make sense to me.
Yeah.
But we couldn't agree on money and we couldn't agree on how much time I spent with them. So what she did is took the kids away. She was like, you can't see them the rest of the summer. And I had a lawyer at the time, and we had to get in front of a judge in order for me to see the kids again. And that was going to take 3 months for that to happen. So 3 months went by without me seeing the kids, including my birthday. And it felt like I was reduced to the role of an ATM. I wasn't a father, I was an ATM.
Yeah.
So those were the two lowest points, probably.
That sounds like one of the most gut-wrenching things a man can go through.
Yeah, it's pretty horrible. It's not a great feeling. There's a statistic I keep quoting that men commit suicide at 10 times what women do after divorce.
I've heard similar to that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And
The
that's,
difference.
yeah, it's huge. And that's not meant to say, to pit men against women. I think we have enough of that today.
Yeah.
But it's meant to point out that I think men post-divorce are in crisis.
And that's where
I know, pardon me?
I was going to say, and that's where you come in to kind of help guide them after the fact.
Yeah, exactly. There's for every crisis, there's an opportunity. And I don't mean to get into toxic positivity. I don't believe in that. But I do believe you have control over your life, and you can either decide to lean into that negativity and give up. And I think so many men do. And it's so sad to see they start drinking or seeking pleasure. And I did this for a while. After my divorce, I sought pleasure, and it doesn't work. You just it's like this pit of trying to seek pleasure. Sex, food, drugs, chasing women. Well, that's sex.
Yeah.
Just
It's like you're on a
pleasure.
boat and there's a hole in the boat. Instead of plugging the hole, you just bail out the water.
It's
but
ridiculous.
it never stops because the hole isn't plugged, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And the tagline on my site is divorce is war. And I don't mean that's a war with your ex. I don't mean that's a war with the courts or judge or lawyer or anything like that. The war is in yourself. The war is to get up every morning. The war is to keep going. The war is making finding the things to be grateful for and keeping moving. That's what the war is.
Mm.
When you were going through this, did you have any kind of spiritual thing to rely on or religion that you turned to?
I did. I was working with a coach, and now she had never been through a divorce, but she was teaching me the the spiritual side of it. And the spiritual side of it is that there is an equal amount of positivity to negativity. If you think of the yin and yang,
Hmm.
you have the light and dark, and there's an equal amount of. If you seek support, you're going to attract challenge. If you seek challenge, you're going to attract support.
That's
Mm.
interesting.
And
What do you mean by that?
let's say you decide not to go to the gym, and
Okay.
you decide to sit on the couch, and you do that every day. Your health is going to get worse. So
Mhm.
you're seeking comfort by sitting in front of the TV. If you seek challenge, if you go to the gym and you learn to box or whatever it is, you lift some weights, you're going to, first of all, you'll get healthier, but second of all, there will be second order consequences where you will attract people into your life who keep you motivated. It's
Hmm.
hard to get moving, but once you get moving, it's a lot, keeping that flywheel going is a lot easier. So relating that to divorce, when I was in my marriage, I was depressed and I was seeking comfort. That's
Mm.
not the way out of depression. The way out of depression is to kick your own ass and motivate yourself out of it. So when I was seeking pleasure, I was attracting in more depression because you
Hmm.
could never have enough. But if you start exercising, start eating right, start bringing the right people into your life, have the right mindset, all of those things are really hard, especially when you're coming out of, that kind of trough. If life
Mm.
moves up and down like this, if you're down here, going to the gym is damn hard.
Mhm.
Eating right is really hard. So doing the hard stuff gets you the good stuff. That's the magic in life.
Yeah.
Doing hard stuff just brings you the good shit.
You know, when you're depressed and in that trough like you're talking about, it's like you're wearing an emotional weight vest, and everything you do is just harder and heavier and slower and takes more motivation and stuff. But there is some kind of benefit to that once you come off and you take that weight vest off. It's like you can experience more gratitude for life and you can
Mm.
see even more brightly colored days and things along those lines. It's interesting to say the least, you know.
Absolutely. I call it low power mode,
Hmm.
Okay.
Okay.
but very similar to what you're talking about. It's like wearing that weight vest.
You
Mm.
know, you said that, you just reminded me of something. I was watching the Joe Rogan podcast the other day, and oh, can you close that?
Yeah.
And he had some picture of two quantum entangled particles. And I guess this came out within like a year ago. And the two pictures, it was like some kind of electron microscope type image, but the picture was exactly a yin yang to the T. And both him and the guest were like, "What is this? This is fascinating.
Yeah.
How has this been the basis of like Buddhist, religion for thousands of years, and now in science we're finding this?"
I keep
But
one on my desk.
huh,
Yeah.
there you go.
You seek challenge, you attract support. The other way around.
It really is like a fundamental principle of life and reality,
Mm-hmm.
that there is no light without dark. And there's always a little bit of dark in the light and a little bit of light in the dark.
I think that's what helps. If you can learn to if you can learn to look for the dark in the light and the light in the dark, I think that keeps you out of that trough, out of that up and down.
Mm.
And the purpose of life isn't to be at the top all the time
Yeah.
because you're just going to go to the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
I think the purpose is to be here,
The middle path.
the middle. Don't get too
Okay.
high, don't get too low. That's obvious. Obviously, I don't mean don't have emotions. Chase what excites you, but don't go too high, don't go too low.
So
Okay.
would you describe yourself as a Buddhist, or how would you say if someone had to
I
ask?
think that's what resonates most closely with me. I mean,
Mhm.
I do meditations Sunday mornings if you guys want to join.
Maybe.
I lean into the yin and yang. I've got a singing bowl over here. You know, it resonates very strongly with me.
And when was it that you kind of picked up this practice? Was it going through the divorce and doing like the work afterwards that you kind of discovered this, or have you been like this for a while now?
No, it was post divorce. Because I was going through that is emotional hell, and I was looking for why I was going through that. I had read the book. Have you guys ever read the book Man's Search for Meaning?
No.
I've read bits and pieces of it.
Highly recommend it. By Viktor Frankl.
Hmm.
Essentially, he asked the question, why did some people survive the Holocaust and not others?
Hmm.
And where he landed was they had a mission, they had something bigger than them. And you can't avoid suffering. All you can do is find meaning in it. And that's really the purpose of life.
Mm.
So if you're facing hard times, look for the meaning in it. What is life teaching you? There's this concept, I call it the baseball bat. And I think every person goes through it by the time they're in their mid-30s. My baseball bat was my divorce. And the baseball bat is meant to wake you up. And it's going to sound really woo-woo, but life has this way of giving everybody a baseball bat moment.
Hmm.
Mm.
I have a friend who had kidney failure. I had a bunch of divorces. There's something that tries to wake you up, and you have a choice. And so I call it the baseball bat. Other people call it the brick in the truck. So life gives you a feather. Most of us ignore it because it's just really light, and you go, I'll deal with that later. Then it gives you a brick, throws a brick at you, and most people ignore that. But then it gives you the truck, and you can't ignore the truck. The truck's going to hit you, and you have no choice but to pay. So we all have that experience. Most 99.9% of us have that experience, and it's our job to figure out the lesson that life is trying to teach you through that baseball bat moment.
Yeah. I like that. It's like you said it earlier. It's like if you can't if you're always searching to get out of a situation and you can't look at the current situation that you're in and find the meaning or find a reason to be grateful for that situation in that moment, then it doesn't matter if you move to a different location or enter a new relationship. If you did no growth through that entire time, nothing is going to change.
No. I really believe it doesn't matter what happens to you, it's how you react to it.
Yeah.
And we can't control what's going to happen to us. All we can do is control how we react to it, like I said. So, but I think there's an important part under that where we know what is being shown to us.
Hmm.
In my case, my divorce was showing me that I was emotionally weak. I was not being strong. Left me manipulatable.
Mm.
And when I stepped back and analyzed that, it all kind of fell into place, the things I needed to work on. Now, if you get sick, maybe there's something you need to change in terms of your health, your diet or exercise or whatever it might be. But taking those challenges and digesting them and looking objectively at who we are and what lessons we can take from it. I think I don't know that that's a very widespread. I think most of us kind of plug our ears and just kind of navigate through the tough part, and then we don't deeply change.
Yeah, I think people just roll with the punches and just hope that somehow, without doing anything, that the situation is gonna be different in the future.
Yeah, and
Mhm.
where's the fun in that?
Right. Yeah.
I think it's a fine line between pain and weakness. as a culture, we're kind of taught that being weak is bad, and so we should never talk about our pains or heal our pains. But there's a difference, you know. You can be strong and in pain, and you can be weak with nothing. But at some point, you have to heal and work through it to, I think, achieve true strength.
I think strength lies through those wounds.
Mm.
I'm reading a book called Iron John. It talks about finding your strength by looking into the wounds that you have from when you're young. So if that's, a father who wasn't there or who was abusive or anything like that, like you're going to carry those wounds with, or an absent mother, you're going to carry those wounds with you.
Mm-hmm.
And you can either try to cover them up, and that to me isn't strength. Covering them up is not strength. To
Yeah.
me, looking into what those wounds are and actually like doing that inner work and looking within, I think that's strength. Being able to accept that you are not perfect, you are going to have shortcomings, but you're going to fix that. I think that's more strength than look at how hard I am. I can't. Nobody can beat me. And then, they poke at that wound and you crumble. That's not strength. Strength is willing to look at yourself and improve yourself because of what you.
I agree. It takes a lot more strength to admit your faults or identify your wounds than to pretend like they don't exist.
It looks like the meeting is about to cut off, and I'll have to call you back here in just a second.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
hang tight, Jeff. We'll be right
Yeah,
back. Oh, I lost that card and had to replace it. I think that.
Oh, whenever your car got stolen?
Yeah. I'm gonna open.
All right.
We doing okay?
Yeah, sorry about that. Here, I'm trying to bring you back up on the screen so we can see you. All right, there we go. Yeah, sorry about that. The card that we had on the Zoom account for the premium account that didn't have the like 30-minute expiration or whatever, it got stolen whenever
Oh, no.
Andrew got his car stolen, and we hadn't updated it since, and this is the first time that had happened. I'm sorry about that.
No worries, it happens.
But we're still recording and everything, and I'll just cut and
Okay.
clip everything out so it looks good. But before we left, you were talking about having to go through and really do the work to heal your like inner child trauma before you can really do more work on yourself. Is that about right? Is that about where we left off?
About right. I don't know. I would call it inner child, but yeah, just your wounds in general. A lot of them do originate in childhood, but sometimes those wounds can come from your 20s and 30s. I worked with an older gentleman who wasn't able to have a new relationship, and it was because he was still stuck on a girl from his 20s. So we bring on stories, and emotions basically are stories that we're storing inside of ourselves. And if we're carrying those stories around with us, then they drive how we act. So the analogy I like is our conscious is the size of a football, and our subconscious is the size of a football field.
Okay.
So we have stories in our subconscious that are playing in the background that we don't even know about. And they get feedback we get feedback from those stories in the form of emotion. So a divorce is such a big thing that it's going to leave all kinds of stories with us. So to bring it back to the child thing, it's not necessarily from childhood. You're having those stories implanted, all the time. But it's your job to become conscious of those stories and let them go, so that you're not letting them drive you moving forward. Now, those stories can impact you in terms of relationships. They can impact you in terms of your business. They impact you. We're all humans are emotionally driven creatures, and it's our job to get rid of as many of those stories as possible. The way one of my mentors described it is there's two stages to human spiritual evolution. Stage one, you're driven by those stories, and everybody experiences emotions, and we go away from pain to pleasure, and that's just this unconscious state. And those are emotionally driven people. You have a baseball bat moment, which I described a few minutes ago,
Mhm.
and that is intended to wake you up. It's intended to wake you out of that emotionally driven experience that you're having. And then stage two is you are conscious of stories, and you can, rather than being driven by them, you can listen to the stories, listen to what they're telling you, so you can find the gold inside of it. And then also you can look for, be driven by inspiration rather than be driven by stories.
Hmm. How do you recommend that people really dig down and find what those stories are that cause those emotions? Do you do it through meditation, prayer, or kind of how do you go about finding what the story is behind the open wound?
I've got a few techniques where I guide you into your body, and emotions get stored inside the body. So you can tune into your body. You can actually feel, like, I'm feeling an energy right now in my chest just talking to you guys. Like, I'm sure that's a bit of anxiety around speaking about
Mm.
some of this stuff. Now I could choose to be driven by that and not speak to you guys, or I just realized that there's an energy there and I'm feeling anxious. So I have a technique where I can guide you into your body, or I've got a few techniques around guiding you into your body, and you're able to pinpoint when that story got implanted and why you're carrying that story with you.
Mm.
Now,
Mm.
the purpose of that, to go back to the yin and yang, nothing in life happens that's purely good. Nothing that happens is purely bad. The story we tell ourselves is this thing was bad or this thing was good. When you have something that's all bad, that you perceive as all bad, that's resentment. When you have something you see as all good, that's infatuation.
Mm.
Mm.
So think
Okay.
of a new relationship you've had with a girl, and you've gone, "Oh my God, she's perfect." And then over time, you start to realize that she's not perfect. Infatuation leads to resentment.
Mm.
Okay.
So the whole thing is to see a situation like this, a combination of good and bad. Everybody is a combination of good and bad. There's no such thing as somebody who's purely good and no such thing as somebody who's purely evil. Now, I'm sure somebody's going to call me out on that, but you need to zoom out far enough where you can see the whole picture. That's the whole point of this work, is you are zooming up, looking down, and seeing where all either the good things that have happened because of this perceived bad thing, or where all the bad things have happened because of this perceived. So
Yeah.
when you're able to balance those scales, the emotion dissolves. Just
Okay.
Mm.
there are three signs of a subconscious block. So three signs that you're having a story. You have a story and you're acting by that. The first is you are doing what needs to be done, but you're getting the opposite results. So you're doing something, and you're trying to make money, but you're losing money.
Mm.
Often that's a subconscious block. The next one is you're doing something, you know what needs to be done, you're doing it, but it feels like drudgery. It feels terrible. And then the third one is you know what needs to be done, but you're not doing it. So that's you need to go to you need to go to the gym, but you're sitting on the couch. So if you learn to tune into those things and learn to find where those subconscious blocks are, you can save yourself a hell of a lot of time. That's how I work with clients, is I help them find where those subconscious blocks are. Now, of course, you can do this on your own. I do a lot of this on my own, and I'm trying not to sneeze. I got one of my beard hairs is tickling my nose.
You're good.
Meditation helps because it helps you to realize that thoughts, and you are not your thoughts, you are not your emotions. The type of meditation I do is, I don't quite know the technical name, but essentially it's um, leave everything as it is. So I you are think of yourself as the sky.
Okay.
Emotions and thoughts are clouds and they pass by, but the sky is, expansive. It's huge. That is who you are. That's your presence. And I guide you into presence, and then you're able to realize that you're having thoughts and you're having emotions, and that's separate from, those things are separate from who you are. The sky is infinite, but clouds are, temporary. Now, there are times in your life where, it seems like the sky is just covered in clouds and you can't see you got to fight really hard to see that sky.
Yeah.
But that's life. You got to tune into that, and you got to recognize that you are the sky and you are not those clouds.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people think they are their thoughts.
Hmm.
And I always like to think that your brain is just an organ like anything else. And just like you can hold your breath or you can speed up or slow down your heart rate a little bit, you can kind of observe your brain and your thoughts and be above it to a certain degree.
The more you can meditate, the easier it is to become the sky, what you're saying.
So
Mhm.
for somebody that's like never meditated before or is out of practice, how do you recommend somebody starts? Like a short time frame, maybe like a guided mindfulness meditation? How do
Like a
you
time
kind
of
of,
day.
yeah, do you have a certain time of day, like an environment you should be in? Kind of how do you go through getting them started in that?
First thing in the morning. Now, the minimum optimal time is about 15 minutes. I mean, don't be autistic around it. Don't like time it to the second.
Hmm.
15 minutes is what it takes for you to wire those. I'm not I'm not in on the biology, but what I've heard is that's what it takes for you to wire those synapses. What the simple way to get into meditation is just to focus on your breath and bring yourself into the present moment. And the breath is the gateway into the here and now. The whole thing behind meditation is, well, the meditation I do is the future doesn't exist yet, and the past hasn't, sorry, the past has happened and it's over with. The future hasn't happened. So the only time that matters is right now.
Mm-hmm.
So the breath is a gateway into that now. And if you can just slow your breath down, feel feel the connection to the floor, feel your feet on the floor, feel your bum on your seat, feel the air going into your mouth or into your nostrils, down your throat, feel how cool it is coming in. Just notice things, like notice how deep your breath is going. Notice if it's catching anywhere. And then your mind 100% is going to come in and it's going to be like, hey, you know about that bill you haven't paid today, or you know about that thing you haven't done yet, and this and that. And what you want to do is treat it like a toddler. So you want to be kind to it, but you want to separate yourself. The thing that works for me is going, you know what? I just need a minute. I'm going to put you over here just for a minute. I'll come back to you in a minute or two or three. You're going to be okay on your own. But we're so used to giving our mind attention when it demands it that it's spoiled. It's like a spoiled toddler that's clamoring for our attention all the time. Just that's why I'm saying, just give me a minute. Give me a minute, and I'll come back to you. That is a good starting point. As you get more advanced at that, you start looking for gaps in the clouds. And what I mean by that is when you close your eyes and you focus on your breath, you're going to start to notice this slight little gap between thoughts. You have that bill to pay. I got to go to work today. I got these three things to do. You notice that breath between when I'm saying those things.
Hmm.
That's that gap between thoughts. And if you can
Mm-hmm.
just look into that, just focus on that rather than the thoughts, and you'll eventually notice that that gap starts to get a little bigger and a little bigger and a little bigger. And that is the gaps in the clouds. That is, you'll notice there's your thoughts, your emotions, and then something else. And that's presence. And that's what you are. You are not those thoughts. You're not those emotions. You're that gap in those. That's the gap in the clouds, and that's what you look for.
Mm.
That's where meditation.
You start to become more the observer than the thing itself.
100%. what I notice now is with my wife, she'll say something that pisses me off. And rather, old me would have just, why are you saying that? Blah, 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 blah. Now I can go, hang on, that thing pissed me off. Why am I pissed off? What about that pissed me off? And you get curious about it. Like why? It's almost like that chink in the armor, and you where did that chink in the armor come from?
Mm.
And I'm not saying you have an armor between. I have a wall up between my wife and I, but it's more, where is this bruise coming from, and
Mm.
why does it hurt when she pushes me? And I'm actually able to say to her, that thing upset me. I don't know why. And then, or usually say it to myself, like, why did that thing upset me? And then in myself, I can go and look for what that story is, that the emotion that I'm carrying with, and then I can, balance it using that yin and yang technique.
Mm.
Mm.
Do you find that setting boundaries is difficult for you?
No, not anymore. It used to be.
Mm-hmm. What kind of boundaries do you set for yourself in relationships?
I think it's easy for a relationship to become all about each other, and you do everything the other person asks.
Mm.
Mm.
And I think a relationship is overlapping circles, but not completely overlapping, maybe only overlapping, 30%. You have your life, she has her life, and you just happen to be going in the same direction. And you have that overlapping bit that you're together over this thing. Or sorry, that you're sharing that 30%. If you are overlapping each other 100% or 90% or too much, that's just going to lead to resentment. So
Yeah.
I don't think it's hard now for me to set those boundaries, because I know if we spend too much time together, or I do too many things, we do too many things for each other, that it's going to lead in a destructive way. And my intention is not to, I enjoy my time with her. I love her. We get along, so the relationship makes sense, and it's an important part of my life. So, but I have to have these boundaries around it.
Mm. Yeah.
What kind of qualities do you look for in a woman? Or I should say, what kind of qualities should a man look for in a woman to avoid the divorce at the end of the line?
It's been many years since I dated, so I think you got to have that compatibility, that you're heading in the same direction. And I'm not a dating coach, so I don't know. I don't have a pat answer on that. But I would say that compatibility is so key. And by compatibility, I mean you agree on the big things, but you leave room for magic to happen.
Mm.
Okay.
I think, and that you bring opposing qualities. So if you're, a man should be a man, a woman should be a woman, and you bring those qualities to the relationship, there can be some overlap with that. I enjoy cooking. I just, that's my hobby, and I enjoy doing that. So, a lot of the time I cook. But she cleans, does the laundry. I make the majority of the money. That's how the relation. But I think what really works for a relationship, for a long-term relationship, is commitment. And you decide, I am going to be with this person, and she decides, I'm going to be with this person, and then you work through things together. You're going to have hard times. I've had hard times with my wife, but it was the underlying commitment to each other that got us through those. I think it's really easy in the age of apps to swipe through 100 women and want to move on, and I think that commitment is extremely rare.
Yeah. Yeah. Mm.
So let's go back to Buddhism for a second. Are there any stories, any Zen koans or stories of the Buddha that you want to share?
I just read a couple months ago Siddhartha,
Mm-hmm.
and part of it, Siddhartha meets this gorgeous woman. I think she's a courtesan in the book, and she's kind of flirting with him. And he says, I'm trying to get it right, something to the effect that he wants a kiss from her, and he says, I could just take a kiss. And she says, yes, you could, but you won't get my sweetness.
Mm.
And I think that's, I think we, in the past, I've tried to take things, not kisses, but you know what I mean? But it's missing that sweetness behind it. And the older I get, the more I look for sweetness, that kindness that's underneath. And I think, you know, along with commitment, I think that sweetness is well, it's been missing from my life. So I hold it with a lot of esteem, and yeah, that's really important to me.
Okay.
So another question. So the Buddha said that enlightenment is possible in this lifetime. Do you believe that?
100% no. I think it's possible to,
Mm.
I think you're always going to have emotions. I think enlightenment is recognizing that you are separate from your emotions and thought. There's always going to be there's always going to be thoughts and emotions that drive you. So that's why I say 100, it's not 100% possible. At least not in my experience. I haven't gotten there. Working
Yeah.
on it.
Easier said than done, right?
100%.
If you had just like one big piece of advice to give to somebody that just got divorced, like you told us, like your first step was to sit and do the inner work, but after they've sat down, maybe they're just not getting the hang of it, or they can't really figure out what exactly that wound or the trauma is that they need to heal. Like how do you guide them through, like they're doing the work, they're actively doing the work to try to figure out where it is that this emotion comes from and how to heal it, but they just aren't getting it? What's something that you can help them do to just kind of boost that process along?
That's where the coaching comes in.
Okay.
I do recommend coaching, even if it's not from someone even if it's not from me. It's so helpful to have that view outside of yourself. I know I relied on other people. If you don't go with coaching, a good brotherhood, somebody who's going to call you out on your shit,
Mm-hmm.
is very helpful. Why aren't you going to the gym? Why aren't you talking to girls? Why aren't you moving on? You know, you're sitting on the couch every night playing video games. Having somebody who calls you out, you know, that's one step. The step above that is getting rid of the story that's underneath. I haven't found anything better than coaching.
Okay.
You can get into meditation, but that takes a while. What I find is there's this immediacy when you're going through that divorce of, I need to feel better today. And that's not always possible, but what I think is helpful is knowing that this too shall pass, that what you're going through, what you're feeling, what you're experiencing is normal. There is a way out of it, because I think that's what leads to that crazy number of men who commit suicide. Like, and that's what leads to depression, is feeling like you can't.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you seem like a very insightful person, and I know before we got on, you said that you were in the process of launching a course. Is there a place that people can go to find you, or get in your calendar to have a conversation with you about this yet?
Yep, I've got the first Tuesday of every month. I do free coaching, free group coaching, so you can get an experience of what it's like to work with me. You can find this information out on my website, divorce-daddy.com. And so I've got free coaching. I've got paid one-on-one coaching. I'm in the process of starting a membership. Maybe by the time this is out, it'll be rolling. The membership will be, it'll have group coaching once a week. Plus there's going to be courses in it, and you're going to get the benefit of being in a community.
Yeah.
So those are some options on how to work with me. Information. By the way, Divorce Daddy, the daddy behind it, it's meant to be a little cheeky. It's meant to, daddy energy to me. Yes, there's the there's the implication of the, you know, the whole sexual side of it, daddy.
Right.
But what I mean by it is, daddy energy is that protective energy. It's that man who's got it. You know, he's in control, and he's strong, and, emotionally centered. And the mission kind of behind this is that daddy energy is so rare today.
Mm,
And I want more of it. I just want to help other men get there. Think back to myself 10 years ago or 15 years ago. And, I was the opposite of that. And I'm not saying I'm that now, but I'm a lot closer to it than I was.
right. Yeah.
And if I can just, help a bunch of men get to that place where they feel strong and in control, I think the world is a better place.
I agree.
Yeah. Mm.
What's what I think? You want to wrap it up?
Do you have any like last questions that you want to ask?
Let me think. So Jeff, here's a question for single guys. What advice would you give them to prepare for marriage?
Work on yourself. My answer as a coach is always going to be work on yourself first, no matter what you're doing. I don't care if you're getting married, starting a relationship, working on a business. You are at the root of that. If you don't have that strong foundation built, it's all going to fall apart. I worked with this guy. I used to be in tech, and I worked with this guy who started a business. He was so emotionally unstable. I'm amazed his business went on that long, but he would randomly fire people, would yell at people. His staff hated him. If you can't be that center, if you can't be that strength, if you can't be that daddy, then people aren't going to respect you, and eventually that house is going to collapse.
Yeah.
So the answer is work on yourself. Put your own oxygen mask on first. It's always going to be my answer. Whenever I start out something new, I first look inside myself and I start looking for where those weaknesses are. That's the first thing I do. There's inner game and outer game. Inner game is focused inside, and then outer game is those skills you don't have. You don't need, you need to build something on a computer you don't know how to program. You need to learn programming. That's outer game. But inner game is that confidence that that you can learn programming and do it.
Yeah.
So that's to me where you start. Getting in a new relationship, look at how the old relationship failed and how that made you feel. And I know that men talking about their emotions has been taboo in the past or seen as weak. I think I disagree strongly with that, and I think it's the strongest thing you can do, because you're really you're really building a solid foundation, and you are becoming stronger by doing that, by looking inside.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. Well, Jeff K, Divorce Daddy, thanks so much for talking with us. This is great.
Thanks, Corbin. Thanks, Andrew. This has been great. I've enjoyed our conversation.
All right. We'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely.